Hey, so it's been a couple weeks. I'm in a new place. This is actually Hollywood. Welcome to Hollywood. This is a new friend, somebody I met over the magic of the internet.
Yes.
And you are an experimental filmmaker in Los Angeles.
Yes,
is that true?
Yes.
Yes. And so you've done some very interesting experimental films, but the reason I'm out here is because you told me, I read about this very interesting story that you have, and I'd like to know more about it. But we haven't discussed beyond maybe a sentence or two worth of it. So I want you to sort of just go into it however you want, and we have about 50 minutes. So.
Yeah, of course. So
you can introduce yourself a little bit more.
Oh, I'm Adam.
Yeah.
Cool. This was in Colorado. I was, as a little gay boy does, was on Grindr, looking for sex. I mean, and at the time I was just young, naive, and even though it was 2 years ago, I still have grown a lot, mainly because of experiences like this. So
tell me a bit more about where in Colorado. Is this an urban or like a rural?
I'm from Loveland, Colorado, which is like small town, no diversity. I was one of the only gay kids in high school.
Okay, so it's conservative, small town America.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So there wasn't much selection when it came to men on Grindr and everything, because it does it by a distance. In LA, you could find someone next door. Yeah, but in Colorado, it was like you were getting people from Denver, which was like an hour and a half away.
Oh, interesting.
So there wasn't really much variety. So I would rarely meet up with people. But there was one time I got a message from a man who was, way out of my league, super attractive, very buff, I think he, on his account it said he was 24. He was, good looking, like I've never seen this guy before. He messaged me and I immediately thought, I was like, got it. It's a catfish.
Right.
It's fake. We continued talking. And I gave him my Snapchat, which usually when it's a catfish, they don't go as far as Snapchat, but he gave me his Snapchat and he started sending pictures of himself and it was him. And
so you do Snapchat in order to detect catfishes? Is that something you do?
No, it's just because on Snapchat it's like you send pictures of your face.
Right.
So there's really no way to fake that.
It's hard to fake, exactly.
So whenever there's a catfish, he's like, gotta add me on Snapchat. It's like, done. They unmatched. They ghost. But he started sending pictures. He seemed really cool. He was obviously very attractive. So we planned to meet up after talking for only a couple days. It was only sexual, just baseline chat, just sort of like surface. I knew his name, knew his age.
But you're saying days?
Yeah, like a couple days.
Okay, all right.
There were just a couple.
From my understanding of a lot of these hookup things, they're usually like now.
Yeah, I was still nervous, so I definitely would kind of plan, I guess, if that makes any sense, but
Do you feel like you were being groomed at all in the time period?
No. Okay. No, I was very interested, but it wasn't like we set out to, let me rephrase that. I would say that we met up abruptly. It was like, hey, like I'm free, you're free, come over, and then it was like that. So that is correct. But we weren't eager to meet when we were talking. It was just kind of lined up. So I went over to his house. It was him, wasn't a catfish, so that was nice. And then I noticed when I was walking up that there was an old woman watching me in like the window, just like in a chair. Turns out it was the dining room, but she just had a chair pulled up to the window and was just watching. So I was like, got it. He lives with his mother or his grandma, and
it's not uncommon, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was very common in Loveland, Colorado, because it's a very predominantly elderly population. So it's very, like he lives with his elderly family or whatever. And then he led me to his basement door, and that was, a little red flag. I was going in this man's basement, but it was like a nice furnished basement, so it wasn't like too sketchy. Like the stairs were carpet. Like it was like I was like, oh, this is nice. So it wasn't like a dungeon. It was it was like a fully finished basement. I
know around here if we don't have basements.
No.
And so like somebody living in a basement just doesn't really compute.
Yes.
But I would assume that maybe in a place like Colorado where in an adult person,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that is maybe that's
It's
not
very
uncommon.
normal.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad, he sleeps in the basement. Like,
Okay.
it's something that people do because it's colder down there. It's just nicer.
All right.
So that wasn't a big red flag. And it was a really nice basement. He led me to...
I'm sorry. Your cat's it's a little off camera action. All right. Let's continue.
Where was I? I was talking about the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice basement, whatever. And we walked into his room. It was
Mm-hmm.
essentially just a room and then a dresser, and then there was like a giant mirror covering a basement window.
Mm-hmm.
And on said table in front of the window was a ton of like gay witchcraft. So it was books, it was different objects, different symbols, and above it he had a book that said gay witchcraft, and he had tons of like witchcraft books. And I have many friends that practice witchcraft, but in more of a spiritual way.
Now, witchcraft is a large topic.
Yes.
So, can you maybe you'll get into it a little bit more, but can you maybe get into like what kind of witchcraft? What is that?
Yeah, I'll definitely get into that because I didn't know. Because I mean, on surface level, like gay witchcraft, like it's nothing like sacrificial. It's nothing crazy. It's just like there's like spells that you can do for yourself and for your future and what you want for yourself. So like witchcraft isn't.
It could be extremely harmless.
Yeah,
right,
yeah. So I was like, this guy, like he's like clean cut. He's normal. I mean, at least I was normal. And he sort of saw me looking at it. He was like, oh, like I practice witchcraft. And it wasn't too big of a red flag just because one of my best friends is also, you know, dabbles in witchcraft and things like that. So like that's not anything that was foreign to me.
Right.
And then I just kind of asked him about it, and he's like, he has a joke. He was like, oh, I put a love spell on you, and that's why you're here. And I kind of laughed it off, and I was like, I got it. So I kind of thought that he picked up on me being like, yeah, I'm not 100%, but then I thought it was him correcting by saying a joke, being like, oh yeah, I'm not this. So that definitely eased my nerves. And then we just sort of started talking. We then sat on his bed and we started making out. And we eventually started having sex. It was just like normal. It was just like maybe like 10 a.m. just in the morning, just one morning. It was nice. Yeah, good sex. That was just sort of it. And
sounds like just the frivolities of youth, you know? Nothing.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it was good sex. I said, cool, thanks. And then I left. So nothing the first time really was too crazy. I was like, got it. He lives with his grandma, has good sex. That was sort of it. And then there was another night. There was a 24-hour coffee shop that everyone just kind of sort of goes to in the town next to mine. It's like the only thing open past 9 in Colorado, so everyone just kind of goes there. I went there, and then he texted me, wanted to hang out. I was with a couple of my friends, so he just sort of joined us. He was really nice, really social. Him and my friend, the one that dabbles in witchcraft a little bit, they hit it off. They were talking. He was really cool. We went to my friend's open mic, and it was just really good. He was really sweet, respectful of my friends. But there was a part of him that seemed a little off. He was very easily agitated, I guess.
Can you get into details of a specific instance?
There was a kid that went by on a skateboard, and he was like playing music out loud, and he just got like super pissed, like saying, "Oh, I should go, knock him off skateboard, like beat him up, like just."
Did you what was body language really came up, or like what was
it was just he was just sort of looking at it, and I could just tell that he was like genuinely upset. It's just because that's one of the things you like roll your eyes at. So I was just like, got it.
So he exited everything in order to focus an anger on some
something just very minute, like
okay, I mean, we all have our whatever, like some things bother us, okay?
Yeah, so I was just like, okay, whatever. I mean, most of the story is essentially me brushing stuff off because he's attractive, which was eventually a good adult lesson that I learned, but we ended up splitting off from my friends. They all wanted to go home. We kind of wanted to still hang out. It was like 3 a.m. at this point. So we went back to his house. I knew that we were going to have sex again, just because what else happens at
3 a.m. in the morning.
3 a.m. in the morning.
And why else would you?
In a basement, two homosexuals that met on Grindr. I mean, it's very...
I thought it was like knitting, like sewing, maybe crocheting.
No.
No.
Was that a joke? Did it go over my head?
No.
Oh.
I was trying to think of like the most innocent thing that could happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, not between two very horny homosexuals in a basement. But anyways, he immediately... It was definitely a little more aggressive, but I just sort of thought it was like, oh, second time we're having sex. He's gonna try something new, I guess. The first time I was the top, and then this time I was gonna let him top me. So that was... Sure. So he just sort of just started fingering me, just like casual, first base stuff. And then we started having sex again for the second time. It's probably like at this point 4 a.m, just because we were just kind of making out, like this, that. Time flies when you're extremely horny.
Is this in the summertime or?
Yeah. It was about a month before I moved to LA when I was 18. So yeah, I was like freshly 18. And we started having sex. It was super good again. And then he was super aggressive, which I just sort of thought was like a sexy thing. But I mean, I enjoyed it. It was good. And then I finished, and then he was still kind of going. So I was like, got it, I'll just sort of wait. And I was essentially in doggy style at this point, so I couldn't really see him, but he was still having sex with me. And so I was just sort of sitting there like, I'm just gonna wait. And then as he's still having sex with me, he said, hey, like, I really want to finish. Can you help me? And I was like, I mean, your dick's in my ass. I don't know how else more I can help you, but sure. And he went, can you pretend to be my little brother while we're having sex? And
Interesting.
And at this point, I couldn't see him. I couldn't see his face. So I was just, like doggy style. He was still, thrusting into me, which was, it was still like whatever. And I was just like, I can't tell if he's joking. This is just such a weird time to bring it up. And so I went, no, like kind of like questioning, being like, did a joke just go over my head, or was he like serious? So I sat there for another 2 minutes, and then he finishes, and I was like, got it. That was extremely confusing. It was the only thing that was on my mind. I was like, it didn't even seem like a joke, even though I couldn't see his face. But I was covered in cum, and I was covered in lube.
Now, does incest fantasy, does it disgust you, or?
I mean, it's just not something I'm interested in.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, it's just like family on family, pretending that someone's your family member during sex. I was just like, not for me.
I mean, everybody has their own fetishes.
Of course. I mean, I'm not going to kink shame, but
exactly.
I was, completely covered in cum and lube, so I was sticky. I was like, yeah, this is fucking nasty. He offered like, hey, we can take a shower. And I said, that's fine. He had a shower in his basement, so we literally just went across there. And then we both got in the shower. We had showered the first time, so it wasn't anything like too crazy, like he was gonna murder me in the shower or anything.
This is a pretty made out basement. There's bathrooms, there's bedroom.
Yeah, and there was even like a living space with like a TV.
So it's almost like an apartment then.
Okay. It was like an apartment, but we were in the shower, and we were just sort of like casually talking, still kind of making out a little bit. And then I distinctly remember this. His entire demeanor changed. It kind of felt like something was like flushed out, and he was just sort of staring at me. It was just super weird, and he looked at me and was like, there's a full moon tomorrow night, right? And I was like, I didn't know that. And he said, I'm looking for a sacrifice. And I really wanted to think that he was joking, but it was one of those things where I was like, this is just too weird. His demeanor changed. My heart started beating. And, I'm someone that grew up watching horror movies and grew up doing like crazy shit. Like, I don't get nervous very often. And it was weird for me to get like that gut feeling like, oh, this is not good. I could just tell, even though I had known him and met him prior.
He's a much larger guy, too.
Yeah.
So he could,
I mean, he towered over me. And
Exactly.
I was, you know, still naked. I was feeling very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling, because he had topped me, so I was seeing him as, you know, something much bigger, like above me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was, you know, twice the size, very muscular. So I was cornered in a shower, and everything sort of started going through my head. I was like, I'm here, 4 a.m., nobody knows that I'm here, and I'm naked in this dude's shower in his basement. Like, it's just, I sort of started putting everything
it's the
together.
Classic story.
Where it was just like, I would see the, like, what I did in a horror movie, and I would, like, call the character a dumbass. I would be like, there's no way that they're gonna go into this basement after all these red flags, and it all started going through, and I sort of like snapped out of it. It was literally like a split second, like, fuck. And he was still looking at me, and I just was completely silent, and he went, I live with 3 old women, we're all witches, and we have a coven in Salem. And at this point, I was afraid of him seeing how fast and hard my heart was beating, just through my chest, because it was like beating super, super hard. But I just sort of didn't want to lose my demeanor. I was hoping that he was joking still, but I knew he wasn't.
And what's your relationship to witchcraft? Do you think it's... are you a believer, non-believer?
Yeah, I'm very spiritual.
Okay.
But after this, I know that there's definitely 2 sides. But essentially, I was just sort of sitting there. Everything started flashing through my head. I was like, I'm gonna fucking die. I'm gonna die after having sex, and it's gonna be gross, and it's just not gonna be cute. My parents are gonna see it. It was just...
So you felt death?
Yeah, I just was... It was like the first time in my life where I was just like, I'm so stupid. And I was just like, I'm about to move, I'm about to start a life, and I'm about to get murdered in this
What did
shower.
you feel about yourself at that point?
What do you mean? Like...
I mean, did you... It's like, what was your... Did you have an image of yourself? Was it...
No, it was just his energy completely switched, and I just knew that it was... Something was wrong. So it was just one of those things where I'm like, this just isn't right. And it was super weird because I had never gotten that feeling for him at all. It was just sort of like he like flipped a switch. And he said that he is a 500-year-old god, and he sucks off young gay boys for youth. That was his quote, not mine. And then he sort of like grabbed me and was like, I want you to be my sacrifice in Salem. Like, you're just perfect. He said like...
Massachusetts, right? Or Salem...
I don't know. Whatever, like, witchy Salem. I don't know.
Yeah, that's thousands of miles away.
Yes, but that's what he said. But then I was literally in full-blown panic.
I can imagine.
Just like, this is so fucking stupid. I'm super stupid for getting myself in this situation. I was just so naive.
You were still in the shower at the time?
Yeah, we were still in the shower. I was still feeling really vulnerable. And he just, he had this laugh. I could still hear it in my head when I think about it. He had this laugh that he did afterwards. And I knew that he wasn't joking still, even though he was laughing. It was just such a menacing laugh. And it was just super fucking weird. Still in his shower, still processing how much of a dumbass I am for getting myself in this situation. And then I just sort of like snapped out of it. I was like, I need to like get the fuck out of here. I need to figure it out. This man, I mean, there's no way I can run. There's no way that I can like physically get my way out of this. So I'm going to have to sort of act my way out of it.
I mean, you're still a good 3 minutes away from leaving with clothing on, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I was completely naked.
Exactly.
It was dark. I didn't really know how to get out of the house.
Exactly.
I knew he lived with 3 other bitches that were probably as crazy as he was. But then I just sort of like put my hand on his chest. I was like, that sounds like sexy. I was just literally trying to sex my way out of it because I knew that he liked me sexually. Obviously, we had sex a couple times. And I got down on my knees, I started sucking his dick, and I was just like, yeah, like, let's do this. This is super sexy. And so I essentially was like trying to sex my way out of this situation.
Oh, interesting. I've never heard about that before.
Yeah, and so like I was, sucking his dick, sort of hoping that my blowjob skills would have him forget that he was trying to sacrifice me to a bunch of witches. And then I kind of got up and I made a joke. Sorry. I made a joke,
no, it's okay.
and it was so bad that I still don't know how he bought it. Because I'm very environmentally friendly, this and that, and he knew that. We had to talk about it, so I went, well, we should probably save the whales and turn the shower off. Literally the dumbest fucking thing I've ever said. And the second I said it, I was like, I'm dead. I was like, I'm not getting an Oscar. I'm terrible. Fuck. But he laughed, and then he reached past me, and he turned the shower off, and he handed me a towel. I was still, like, trying to hold back me shivering, because it was, like, something I had never experienced before, that, like...
You didn't want to show fear?
No, because I wanted him to think that I was on board. Because if he saw me shaking, or if he saw I was scared that he would see my heart beating through my chest, I was like, he's gonna catch on. Like, I was just... a million thoughts going through my head at this point, and I was just really just wanting to get the fuck out. I immediately went over, and I was, like, searching for my clothes, because we'd obviously, like, thrown them everywhere. So I got dressed, and I was still trying to be normal, just sort of just like, I was like casually just like checking my phone, just like not a care in the world. Got my clothes on. I made sure I didn't forget anything. I was like, I'm never fucking coming down here. And then he led me through the dark basement, up the stairs, through the house, and then out to the front door. And then I said that I would see him tomorrow, because he was like, I'm like down for this. So I kissed him, and then I went over to my car, and as I was walking maybe 30 feet to my car, I was still like, I'm gonna hear footsteps running up behind me. He's gonna fucking kill me still. And I got in my car, locked the door, and I left. And it was one of those points where I didn't even really process what was happening. So I immediately drove over to one of my friend's house, and there was, 4 of my friends there, and I had a button-up shirt, and all my buttons were all fucked up.
Were they awake?
I mean, yeah. They had me. I called them, and I was like, something crazy just happened. I like need to process it. So I had a button-up shirt. My pants were all unbuckled, untied. I mean, my hair was a mess. I just ran out of the shower. And so I had gotten there, I told them everything that happened, and it was just sort of one of those things where I was like, that's fucking crazy. And I didn't unfriend or block him. I was just kind of hoping that, a couple weeks would go by and I would just quietly unfriend him, hoping that I could move to LA fast enough.
Does he have enough information to find you?
No. I mean, he had my Snapchat, and that was... that was
But you didn't know where you lived or anything like that?
No, because at least at this age, I was smart enough to block these men that I was adding on Snapchat from my stories, my public stories that, like, my friends and family see of, like, places I'm going, places I'm doing. So I luckily had blocked him from that. And I didn't hear from him for, like, another 2 weeks. So I... just honestly forgot to unfriend him, forgot to block him. It was just one of those things. I was just like, holy fuck, this guy wanted to sacrifice me to a ton of witches. He was into incest. Also, I think I forgot to say something from when we were in the shower. I had asked him about the incest comment, and he had said that he grew up with his cousin from like age 6 to when they moved out, and they constantly had sex. And so it was like a blood cousin, and they had constantly had sex. He lost his virginity to him, and it was just like, 2 young family members having sex, so that was why he was into it. But anyways, so that sort of put together that he was into incest, he was into witchcraft, he was living with 3 old women upstairs, and he was in the basement. I was like, that explains the old woman in the door, that explains all this gay witchcraft stuff, his like whole love spell thing that he said. It like all came together because I was talking to my friends, and I was completely frantic at this point. I mean, I was still like covered in lube, like still wet from a random man's shower, and it was just one of those things that I just sort of hoped would just become a story.
What an interesting life.
Yeah, I know. It was just one of those things I was like, oh my god, only this would happen to me. Only this, like, yada. It was just, like, funny. But about a few days after I was, like, completely comfortable, completely forgot about him, he had messaged me. And I was like, fuck. It was just one of those things where it all came back to me. I was like, all right, here's this guy. He didn't message me for the full moon thing, so I was like, maybe he forgot, or it just didn't happen. So I waited a couple hours to open it. Waited a couple hours to open it, and I opened it, and he said, hey, like, you didn't go to work today. So I was immediately, like, my heart dropped. I never told him where I worked. And he said, oh, like, you didn't go to work today. And I was kind of hoping he was just assuming it was my day off, something. And I said, are you my new stalker? And he said, no, but you weren't at work. I said, I never told you where I worked. He went, oh, yeah, my mom, she's in the hospital nearby, so I just wanted to drop by.
Did you work in a customer-facing capacity? Or?
Yes, I was a bartender. Because in Colorado, you can be a bartender at 18. Right, so sure. I was a bartender at, like, a dive bar downtown. Okay. Morning shift. So it was usually pretty dead. I was the only server on. I was the only bartender, so I just would kind of do everything. Just because, like, it's a bar in the morning, so I really don't get that much traffic. But anyways... it was my one day off that week, so I looked at the schedule and I texted the girl who was working, and it turns out that my friend was the friend that I had gone over to at 4 a.m. right after it happened, so I texted her a picture of him, because I still had a picture off of his profile, and I sent it to her and I said, hey, this is the guy that I had sex with, the crazy one. Did you see him today? And she went, yeah, I saw him. He came into the bar. I said, hey, like, sit wherever you want. And then he immediately, like, bolted back to the bathroom, out to the patio, and then through the restaurant again, and then he left. And she said that he was frantic, and she thought that he had, like, forgotten his phone somewhere, that he was looking for something. And so I immediately was like, I've got a new stalker.
Well, so was this a customer that had, like, okay, so could it have been that he had seen you and then found you on the app?
I highly doubt it, because
So how did he get that connection?
I don't know. I still to this day
do not know
how he found out where I worked. Because
and how big is this town?
I mean, I lived on the far side of one town, and he lived on the far side of the other town. So it was like a 35-minute drive all the way. I mean, from downtown Loveland, downtown.
And did you talk about work at all? Or?
No. I mean, it was very...
when he was with your friends, did he get contact with any of the other friends?
No, not that I know of. I was with him the whole time. He knew that I was a bartender. He knew I was a server, but that was kind of it.
It's a plot hole here.
I know. It's something that still, to this day, just confuses me. I don't know how he got that information. I didn't have, like, anything, like, I don't know, like a pen that said, like, oh, the bar's name on it or something. I didn't have a business card.
But he knew your car, though.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he knew what my car looked like, but he never walked up to my car. It was only ever, like, you know, I would park in front of his house and I'd walk in. And he would meet me at the front door. We drove separately from the coffee shop to his house, so he really never even got up close to my car to really know what it is. And I have a Subaru, which in Colorado there's literally
of course, everywhere. Because there's mountains everywhere. Yeah. So
anyway,
I'm sorry but
no. But it was just sort of one of those things where I still do not know how he found out where I worked. But still, it was just one of those things that made me grow up super quick. I was like, I'm super stupid. Like, I can't let people's looks deceive me, because even though he was super attractive and we had really good sex, I can't ignore what could put my life at risk for sex. It's just not worth it. And it was just one of those things. I really haven't been on Grindr a whole lot since, just because that sort of killed me. It was super freaky, and I'll be honest, I still do sort of every, like, 6 or so months I'll I found his Instagram, and I'll just sort of see what the fuck he's doing. He will post about different things and going to Salem, and he married a man and he divorced him, and this dude is fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I screen recorded all of this.
Well, but so I'm something missing here, because you said you were kidnapped, or did I misread?
No, he did keep me in his basement.
Okay, are we getting there?
No. Like, the whole me being in the basement thing was the thing I had to act my way out of.
Oh, I thought I was under the impression, and this is probably me, is that you were there for days.
No.
Oh.
No, we had known each other for a few days.
So you interpret that event as a kidnapping?
No.
I
wouldn't say it was a kidnapping.
So it's me misreading it. Okay.
Yeah.
As I said, I knew very little going in, intentionally so.
Yeah, it was just literally probably took course over 2 hours, the main meat of the story. And then everything leading up to it was just sort of something that you look back at and are like, got it.
So there was no subsequent interaction after that?
No, luckily not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you ever feel that it was worth talking to law enforcement about?
No. Just because there was really nothing really happened.
Well,
he talked about it, and I don't know. I just didn't want to.
I guess for me, what I would think is that perhaps I was lucky.
Yeah.
It
was just something I didn't want to dig into.
Yeah. That's the thing with the Jeffrey Dahmer stories, right? Is that there are people that escape, like, oh, that guy was really weird, right? And then it's like, yeah, you're the one that survived. Like, maybe if you had gone, you could save lives.
Yeah, I understand that, but it was one of those things where I was about to move. It was one of those things where I didn't want to. I was still super shooken up about it.
I can imagine.
It was just one of those things where, I don't know how to explain that. Oh yeah, I went over to it. It was sort of something that embarrassed me. It was oh yeah, I willingly went into this man's basement, had sex with him after meeting him on Grindr. It's just something that's okay, come on, you're just stupid. So I didn't really want to talk to law enforcement just because, it was super embarrassing that I got myself into that situation. And I had made a short film for the law enforcement in my old town when I was a freshman in high school. So I knew all of them. And it was just not something I was wanting to do. I didn't want my parents to, find out that I was, going out and having sex with men nearly twice my age. It's just...
So, to this day, the person's still out at large, correct? As far as you know?
Yeah, he's active on social media.
Okay, so I guess he's not, murdering too many people.
Not that I know of.
Not that I know of. But that's a crazy story. So, I would assume that... Or you don't have to share this if you don't want to. But would you say that was the first time you sort of felt in jeopardy at that point?
Yes, in my life. Yeah, and even since then, I still haven't felt that. It's to me, it's definitely I'll whenever I tell it an elevator pitch, but in a story, I'm just oh yeah, sex was crazy. He, wouldn't let me leave. He was cornering me in his shower. Was into incest, wanted to sacrifice me to infinite witches. It's just sort of one of those things that I will often tell it as sort of this funny thing happened to me, but legitimately I thought I was gonna die. So it was I wouldn't say it was traumatic because I got over it pretty quick, and it has since then sort of been the crazy story for me. And so it was just something that I don't know. It definitely changed me a lot, which sounds so just how free I was, and just how I would trust anyone, and how I just now I just sort of acknowledge my gut more, just because that feeling was meant to sort of avoid the interaction. Was my immediate red flags. It was, this dude was so gorgeous, and he was talking to me, freshly 18, not too good self-esteem, and this guy's gorgeous. And so it was just one of those things where there were so many red flags, and I'm really stupid for ignoring them.
You discard them for the other,
because he was attractive.
There's a Robert Heinlein quote: "The man isn't a rational animal; he's a rationalizing animal."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's much more true. Is that we do find things that make sense to us in order to do what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't really think at a rational level.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's
But I mean, he's still out.
Yeah, you made some
Colorado,
very interesting statements there. I mean, I think that one of the ones that I thought that really sort of changed how I think about things is that you said that when you felt yourself as a victim, you decided to not necessarily do sexual resistance.
Yeah.
But to go the opposite direction in a hope to get out of it.
Yes.
Now, I would assume that this is extremely common, but I hadn't heard it, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't heard that before, and it really changes the way that I think about those things. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be much more common, especially in heterosexual.
Yeah.
Where a woman would make herself sexually available, maybe in order to.
Yeah, of course.
Escape.
Yeah.
That's really the idea of submitting yourself to escape.
Yeah.
Is a very interesting sort of dynamic that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, it's because I went into it feeling very dominated because the first time we had sex, I had sex with him. I was the top. So it was just sort of one of those things where I was like, I felt like this dominance over him.
Well, you were in his space, which is another different thing.
I mean,
you don't know if they have like special locks or like, you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
You have no idea.
And then it all just kind of hit me like a brick in that shower, and literally, I just sort of felt completely cornered. Yeah.
And that's the most vulnerable position to be in.
Yeah.
Because, there is no. He knows there's nothing hiding.
Yeah.
He knows that, like, in any part of any building, probably the place that's hardest or takes the most time to get out of would be inside if you think about it. Because you have to exit the shower. You have to
I didn't have my phone. I didn't have anything.
You don't have any of those things, right? And so that is the most sort of weakest position. So like, he springs that on you in the most vulnerable time, which is it's weird. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something going on. I don't know if that was coincidence, because we like to attribute patterns that don't necessarily exist because we're pattern forming animals, right? So perhaps he just has a lot of things going on through his head, and that's when that crazy stuff came out. But it came out in the worst time.
Yeah.
time. And so, I guess that's going to be a forever unsolved thing, how intentional it was.
Yeah, and it still bothers me to say how I don't know how he found out where I worked. It's just still something that I just don't know. So, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I would probably never be able to set in a city like Los Angeles, right? Like, that would be very difficult. But I'm trying to imagine in a smaller place. I've lived in smaller towns before. It would still be quite challenging.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
But there are other things where sometimes I come across people before I know them. Mm-hmm. I work in the tech industry, and it's happened many times, especially before COVID. We would go to meetups, whether it be speakers or something like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would end up conversing with somebody maybe 4 or 5 times, and then 6 months later I end up working with them.
Yeah.
And I don't realize, I don't connect them together. So I was thinking, could it be possible that something like that happened? And to the best of your knowledge, the answer is no.
I mean, meaning he knew who I was when he first messaged me.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, that's that cute bartender that I saw.
Yeah, I honestly never thought about that, but I'm not sure.
Because you serve so many people, and
I mean, I don't.
And you don't remember all of them.
I don't.
But it's the customer remembers the bartender much more than the bartender remembers the customer. Because
you have
there's
one bartender a day.
And 500, right, exactly. Mm-hmm. So... And you said you'd never seen him on that before.
No.
You know what would be kind of crazy? Would be if he had obsessed when he saw you.
Yeah.
And then, on a lark, went on to these swiping apps. And then found you again.
Who knows?
That's how you'd write the stories. If you're
yeah.
Yeah.
Just...
It's crazy.
Yeah, I never... saw him again on that app because I had, deleted Grindr and re-downloaded like everyone does, and he never really...
He never came back, right.
And I honestly would go on there to see if he was still on there. And I would go on just like a new base account, like no connection to me, and I would see it, and he was never on there.
Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. And I was super nervous that the night after, when we were supposed to do this, full moon, whatever,
right.
Even though it would have been 1,000 miles away, so many unanswered questions.
Right.
But it was that night when he never texted me. I don't know. Maybe he found someone else. I don't know. But I mean,
well, on the Instagram account that he's on, does it look like he's still in Colorado?
I think he is.
He is, okay.
But I know that he does go on long trips to Salem.
What does he do for work or anything?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
No idea.
I think we talked about it. I think he said he was a model. He was... I honestly can't think.
Just a drifter, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I forget his name. I think it was Jeremy. It might have been James. I don't...
Oh, you shouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know his name, so...
Some J name, yeah.
Yeah, it was something with a J, but I mean, I remember these little details, like his laugh and the look in his eyes, but I can't remember the basic things that he told me.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How those just sort of these nuggets that you sort of seem to remember.
I mean, it's just something that I don't think about in a much deeper way. It's more of something like, good thing I got out of that kind of thing. I don't really think of other things I could have done. I'm just like, I got myself in this situation, got myself out.
How has it changed how you engage with people or about the world?
I'm a lot more respectful of myself. So I don't care how attractive they are. If it seems sketchy, I mean, I don't really care. Like, it's just like, I'm out the second I get a red flag. But it also just sort of helped me listen to my gut more, especially with being about to move out to, LA, like a town a million times bigger than where I was originally. It definitely happened for some sort of fucked up reason, where it's just like, now I have that intuition of like what's good and what's bad. Just like, don't trust everyone. Let your mind do the talking before your penis. Just don't get into these situations because you're horny or because you're wanting to have sex with this attractive man. Just, if it's a red flag, you need to get out of it. So it was definitely very interesting.
Yes, it's odd. I do know that when it comes to fetishisms, those types of red flags are kind of the subject of the fetish itself.
Yeah, like,
so
when he was really rough during sex, I was like, this is just him, like, oh, he was fine the first time, he went pretty rough on me, so now that can kind of translate over. And I was just sort of thinking that it was just sort of like he was letting me in on a kink of his, that he likes it a little bit rough. So it definitely, in the world of sex, things slide a lot more often just because you're in a different mindset, you're very vulnerable, and you're very distracted. So it was just sort of one of those things where it literally took a red flag in front of my face to be like, got it, I'm fucked.
That's interesting. I mean, I've long sort of talked about how challenging and strange it must be to anything that we sort of regard as like pedophiles or something like that. And so even if somebody's like, oh, I have these desires, let's say, but I don't want to act upon them. Like, and I want to be an upstanding moral person, or these fetishes or something, like, a fetish to murder somebody, or whatever it is. It must be challenging. I don't quite know, because it's like, I was looking up just a couple weeks ago, and it was a poll about like what people fantasize about, and the percentages, and it's much higher than I would have expected for a lot of things that we would consider to be very illegal, right?
Yes.
And I think like, what's the right thing to do here, right? Is it like just not act, because we all assume it's certainly antisocial to sexualize children or anything like that, or murder somebody for, like, of course it's all bad, but like whenever somebody has a dream where like sexualization happens and they wake up from a dream, or I can imagine it haunts people even if they are good moral actors.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those stories that I constantly think about, and it's just something that I'm, like, in a dark way sort of happy that it happened, because it sort of like snapped me into shape where I was like, got it, like, I need to not trust people, because I'm about to move out to this big city with a lot more fucking crazy people than just this guy.
So you thought it was kind of a cheap lesson?
I was just like, got it. This was something telling me, you're being stupid. This is like a lesson. So, I mean, I don't know. Just him saying it was a love spell, because, like, before that, I wouldn't have never just gone. Like, it sort of felt like I had a blanket over my head because he was super attractive, and then you talk about this love spell, and it's just...
I've never heard of any of these things before.
Yeah,
so
I mean...
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and then I luckily moved out here and eventually kind of forgot about him, and it's just sort of that story that comes up at parties or something crazy. I mean, it's now luckily just a story, but...
So you've told this to many people. Many. So has there ever been anybody who's responded with a similar story?
No. One of a guy that I had met on Tinder here that we eventually just sort of became like casual friends. I noticed that one of the times I hadn't checked his Instagram for like 6 months. It's just something I do like when I'm high or something. I'm like, let's see what the witch is up to. So I looked and it said, oh, this person is now following. So it's like when you're on Instagram, you can see, oh, this person follows this person. And it said, this guy that I met on Tinder in LA is following the witch dude from Colorado. So I messaged him, and he's like, oh yeah, I met him in a bar. I thought he was super cute. And so it was just this guy.
How did he meet him?
The guy was originally from Denver. The guy that I met in LA, it was just one of those things where I was like, fuck, he's out in LA now. But luckily, no. He was at a gay bar in Denver, met this guy who had at the time lived in Denver, and then moved to LA, and then met me.
Interesting.
So it was something where I was like, you need to unfollow that dude.
Yeah,
He's the guy that the witch did. Yeah, I explained to him the whole story.
That's a connection. Yeah, you don't want that. Yeah, I can imagine. I wonder if, like, they look for marks, if you will, you know?
Because, I mean, the guy that...
I mean, you as an 18-year-old, you sort of qualify as a mark.
Yeah, the guy at the time was also very young, and honestly, it has sort of similar things to me. He's a smaller guy. He's young, so it was definitely, like, you could definitely see a correlation. But they never met, but they exchanged socials, but never met up.
Huh. Interesting. So he's kind of he kind of just lurks and tries to find people. It's
and he just sort of disappears.
Yeah, we hear stories about that kind of stuff all the time, right? There's a lot of people in society that are like that.
it was just one of those things where it was like, oh no, those things happen to other people. But it was in that moment I was like, no, it's happening to me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, because I watch lots of true crime and I read all the comments of people being like, oh, well, she's fucking stupid. She got herself in this situation. I was afraid. I was like, I'm going to end up on one of these. And I am that stupid person that got themselves in this situation.
About 5 minutes. So, yeah, it's interesting because it's like there's two sort of big problems here. There's the problem of all the victims, which is terrible. Yeah. But then there's this kind of problem that he has this impulse to keep victimizing people.
Yeah.
And like, it's how would you, like, I want this dude, whoever it is, to be happy so he stops doing this shit, right? And I don't want anybody to do that. Like, but how do you resolve that psychologically? Yeah. Like, I don't know how to do that. I mean, are there pills? Or like, I haven't got no idea, right?
The whole incest thing was he grew up with this cousin from a very young age. Like, this was his norm. So
yeah, like I'm sure that...
Who knows? Maybe his cousin was a witch. I'm
sure that incest is one of those things that, like, we don't talk about as a society, but it happens much more than... It's like when trans people came out, and then... I talked about this with a friend, how he thought we were estimating, how many trans people do you think there are? And we were like, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000. Turned out there's like what, 2 million or a substantial number. And like, wow, I didn't realize that there were so many people that go through these difficulties. And I mean, I'm
could be the same with pedophiles.
Yeah, it was pedophiles, right? Like, I don't know how dumb. Like, I would assume that 99% of people with those feelings never act on them, and they're upstanding people that get wives and you know, and children, and they don't ever act on it, and they struggle with it their entire lives, right? And it's just those few sort of people that are kind of whacking out of control that end up doing it. But like, that must be terrible. Right?
It was an interesting situation, but I mean,
I don't like I like, I want to have sympathy for all sides, right? But like, yeah, like it's kind of crazy that there's something something there, because it's like if he was healthier, then you might have had a great relationship with this individual.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Like, if that's what I'm thinking. It's like you went in there and you were super happy until all of this crazy shit went down.
Yeah.
And if, like, he had fewer screws loose, you know, then you could be like, oh, here's my husband. And I'd be like, oh, well, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
and then that's it. But, like, there's just this, it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
How, and I probably some of it is because psychology is still super young, right? Maybe only like modern psychology, like from the 70s or so, right? And so, like, I think a lot of these things, like, we don't even have proper classifications for, and we don't know how to address them.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have processes for it, but we know that they exist. I don't know. It's so interesting. Well, I think that's our time. I thank you so much for telling your story.
Yes, of course.
That's so nice. Are you okay with everything that we recorded today? Is that okay?
I mean,
cool,
I tell
wonderful.
people that anyways.
Wonderful. I just didn't know if I went anywhere. So I think that's it. Next time I'm going to finally do the final Beatrice Sparks, and after that it's going to be a multi-week thing to Norman Peele, and it's going to be fun. But yeah, so that's it. Next time. Thank you so much.
Yes,
appreciate
thank
it. You can exit over there. And
I'll exit. Oh shit! Yeah. I'll exit over here.